Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Justin Broderick. I'm your content manager at ACR Artex. Thank you for joining another episode of Ask ACR, where we take your questions that you submit to us on social media and hope to answer some of your questions with the whole idea of not trying to sell you anything, just help your family stay safe on the water. And so you can focus on fishing and boating and outdoors and not have to worry about what should happen if there was an emergency that happened to arise. Today, I'm joined by my good friend,
Mikhail D'Arcangelo, Vice President of Marketing.
Awesome. Cool. So Mikkel's been with the company for a really long time. Uh,
17 years.
17 years. He's a lifer. Mikkel is going to answer a lot of the questions that you guys have been submitting to us. So again, we appreciate your input. We appreciate everybody's desire to stay safe on the water and outdoors. Really seeing a lot of increase in interest in staying safe on the water. People are being a lot more, I think, smart these days about safety. That with some of the more high profile things that we've seen happen on the water over the last few years. So it's really good to see a better interest in just staying safe on the water. It's nice to have. It's like an insurance policy. It's better to have it and not need it. So the first thing we wanted to talk about today, the first question that came through was essentially what's the difference between 406 compared to other models? And what they're referring to, obviously, everybody in the audience here, is 406 megahertz. And so Mikkel is going to talk to you a little bit between what the difference between 406 is and what our other models are. These are our beacons right here. And you can see Mikkel has one as well. But he can explain to you what 406 is and how it works and how it can keep your family safe.
Yeah, so 406 is actually the frequency, the megahertz frequency that EPIRBs and personal locator beacons transmit on. Same with the beacons in the aircraft, the ELTs. They all transmit on a 406 megahertz distress signal, and it's the only purpose for that frequency is for search and rescue. And getting these messages to the satellites and back down to the ground stations as fast as possible. So it's a protected band, and the real benefit here is it's a direct link to search and rescue using government satellites, no subscription fees, anything like that. And search and rescue can literally know who you are, where you are, and that you need help, in as little as 3 minutes. So that's what a 406 megahertz beacon is, and kind of by law, the government, it has to come out and turn that beacon off because it'll continue to go off and use the satellites. So they literally have to come out and turn it off. Whereas there's other frequencies out there. Everyone's familiar with GPS and those frequencies, but there's also much lower power frequencies using different commercial satellites. So you're familiar with like the Global Star satellite network, the Iridium satellite network. Those beacons are called send devices, and they're really great for tracking and some cool features like that with some messaging and whatnot. Those ones require obviously a subscription because you're using commercial satellites, and also part of that is they use a third-party call center to help locate you and get your distress to search and rescue. So it's not a direct link like ours, and that's why you'll hear people reference, the fact that they want 406 because it does have that direct link straight to the Coast Guard, or if you're on land, it's a direct link right to the Air Force Rescue Coordination Center.
Gotcha. And so just to kind of even further clarify, because I've heard this out there, it seems like some people ask us, well, which of your beacons has 406, and the way I always explain it to folks is, we make beacons for the boat, obviously EPIRBs. We make beacons that also can be used on the boat, but can also be used for hiking, camping, outdoor applications. And then, like you mentioned, for the aircraft, the ELTs. So essentially, all three of our beacon types have that 406 megahertz technology, correct?
Correct. So all EPIRBs are required to have the 406 frequencies. Personal locator beacons, like Justin's talking about, the smaller personal ones. You be careful there when you're buying a personal locator beacon, because some companies will call their product a personal locator beacon, but it's not 406. A 406 megahertz beacon is a personal locator beacon. So some people will, they might tag that in social media, or they might reference that it's a personal locator beacon, but only a 406 megahertz beacon is by the FCC rules considered a person locator beacon. And then on aircrafts, they're called an ELT, an emergency locator transmitter. A lot of people confuse that with the black box. It's not the black box, but this is essentially the beacon that's installed in the plane with an external antenna and a switch in the cockpit that lets, if you were to experience a crash, the pilot can either, before the crash, turn the beacon on, or it will sense a sudden impact and turn the beacon on with an impact. So
gotcha. So it's the ELT, for example, the difference between the black box. It's not recording flight data. It's only triggered in case of impact, G forces, and such like that.
Correct. It's letting search. Yep.
We've had some survivors who even, sent in their ELTs after maybe a rough landing or things like that, wheels up landings. And so we've gotten the ELTs triggered from there. Thankful to have survivors from there.
Yep.
So all of our beacons, the three types, the EPIRBs, the PLBs, and then the ELTs for the planes, they operate with the 406 signal, but they use GPS, 406 megahertz, and then they also use a third band, correct? The 121.5?
Correct. So they have 121.5, and that's what the beacon frequency used to be.
And we use that kind of like as a homing signal right now, right? Don't they use that when they get closer to the search and rescue uses that when they get closer?
Correct. When search and rescue get within roughly a 10-mile radius of the beacon, their direction finding equipment will home in directly on that, and that's bring them on a straight line to you. So you think about it, they might get your GPS coordinates as they're taking off in a helicopter or taking off from the dock and heading straight to you, but you might be drifting slightly by the time they actually get to you. And if the people on the radio aren't giving them the latest GPS coordinates, you might be slightly off. So that's where that 121 just redirects them exactly overhead.
That's a great segue actually into some of the other questions that have been submitted recently that I've seen on the Facebook groups down here. Really, like, what do I need when I'm on the boat, for example? Not necessarily outdoor applications, but when I'm fishing on the boat, just to make sure that I'm safe. And so what we're normally telling people to have is, obviously the EPIRB for the boat. And then for every person in your boat, every crew member, at least adults, to have a personal locator beacon. There's no guaranteed time frame within how long it takes for search and rescue to reach you, depending upon weather, drift patterns, current, who's available in the area. It may not always be the Coast Guard that reaches you that first time. It might even be CETO, another vessel that's fishing in the area. The Coast Guard is going to try to effect the most efficient rescue possible. So we say, bring this for the boat, and then make sure you have one of these for every person out there. Tell me why this is so much more important as well. Like, I think I always think that I'm going to be able to tread water, or I'll grab a PFD, but it seems like there's so many other variables in when you're sinking, and there's so many other things to think about. And it's just sinking in that you literally are sinking, no pun intended. But why do I need this, especially compared to this?
Yeah. So really, when EPIRBs are designed for boats, they come in two different brackets. This is a manual release bracket. We also make one with a big casing that goes over for an automatic bracket. Like Justin said, EPIRBs are designed for boats. They're really designed for the marine environment, so they'll float in an upright position. Once they take it out of the bracket and you get it wet, they'll automatically turn on. And like I said, you can just tie that lanyard onto yourself and go. The personal locator beacons, they're a lot smaller, a lot more convenient to carry and hold and wear, and they're really designed for you to be worn, whether it's with the back strap or the oral inflation clip or a belt clip that's all included. While we make our personal locator beacons buoyant, they're buoyant only so you can retrieve them if you drop them in the water. They're not, you're not going to have it floating in the water like this and have it transmitting. They'll actually float more in an upside down position, and it's just so you can retrieve them. So you want to make sure you're, wearing a life jacket so you can keep it mounted nice and high on your life jacket and out of the water. If you're not wearing a life jacket, that's where a personal locator beacon gets to be more tricky. because if you float it on your back, you can try to balance it,
Mm-hmm.
but most people are literally going to have to tread water and hold it out. Sorry, hold it in their hand. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult on when you're actually in the water if you're not wearing a life jacket. So one, always wear a life jacket. The other real difference here is, from a convenience factor, if you're going on any friend's boats, or if you're going to take a family RV trip or camping trip, that's where personal locator beacon definitely becomes a lot more friendly because, Justin, you invite me fishing on your boat. I don't know what safety gear you have on your boat until I'm actually on your boat. So, I could easily take my own little personal locator beacon, and now I've got the peace of mind knowing I have something in case you don't.
Gotcha. And we always, I hear from the survivors, they say like it's literally in a matter of 30 seconds. It feels like that they realize what's happening from literally just our most recent survivor that submitted a story that we published today, something with the bait well pump where they actually just started to feel the back of the boat getting really heavy. Another guy over in Marco Island on the west coast of Florida over there, a wave literally kind of this weird rogue wave type of event. They're shark fishing in otherwise calm waters, but a large wave came over the transom, killed the batteries and everything. So now you don't have a radio. Thank God he had a phone that was in a waterproof pouch that he used to also effect rescue. But he said he literally told his friend, "Dude, we're getting off the boat now." And his friend was like, "No, what do you mean?" And he's like, and then within 30 seconds, the boat literally rolled and started to sink. So he used this device, an older rescue link, and then helped communicate while he was floating. Thank God they had their PFD to also tell search and rescue where they were right there out of Goodland. So it's all about layers of safety, right? Because you think especially as guys, as men, that's not going to happen to me. Oh, I've been out 20, 30 miles in a 17-foot Cape Horn. Nothing's going to happen to me. But that's
my boat won't sink.
Yeah.
And you know what? You're right. Your boat might not sink. It might capsize. And the other thing is, there might not be anything ever wrong with your boat. You might have a medical emergency and you're 60 miles offshore. And, can you get search and rescue direct to your exact spot in as fast a time as possible? And the only way you can really do that is with a personal locator beacon or with an EPIRB. And that way they've got that constant position. We've had a lot of people, going fast on their boats far out and they've fallen and people have punctured lungs and become unresponsive and they just need to be evacuated. Had people not packed the correct medicine and have had diabetic attacks out on the water. And so little things like that, you just never know. And on land, I mean, how many rescues do we get where someone tripped and fell and someone with a good Samaritan with one of our PLBs walks upon them and finds them and has to turn on their beacon for them. So, we get those every week. So there's really infinite uses. Just most important thing, register that beacon when you buy it. Yeah. That's your part in your own rescue. That way they know exactly who you are and some emergency contacts. That way they can reach out and get more information.
Make the rescue more efficient, know if there's going to be pre-existing medical conditions, confirm that it is you that's out there, because there are false alarms that happen, things like that. So at a bare minimum for the boat, we definitely say an EPIRB and a PLB. We'll go over some of the other things in next week's and later episodes of Ask ACR about other things that you can have on board that help increase that envelope of safety with actually pretty low profile and easy, very low barrier to entry, with respect to the price. But some really cool technology and miniaturization that's coming out that we'll talk about later that also helps augment the having the PLB, the EPIRB and the PLB. Real quick, we had another question that came through that said, like, how long do the batteries last? And I think that's important. And two things that we always talk about are the storage battery life and then the active battery life. Could you talk about just specific with these two devices and how they're different, since we are recommending you have these on the boat?
Yeah. So from a storage life standpoint, our EPIRBs have a 10-year batteries. So literally, once you buy it, you just register that beacon and don't have to do anything for that EPIRB for a period of 10 years. The EPIRB Justin's holding there does have a user replaceable battery, so makes life a whole lot easier. With the with the personal locator beacons, they do have essentially a 6-year battery life in them. They're a little bit smaller, more compact, so they've got a 6-year battery life in those beacons. When you activate it, that's another difference between an EPIRB and a PLB. EPIRBs are required to work for a minimum of 48 hours, and that's at minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 20 degrees Celsius. And same with the PLB, but they're required to work for 24 hours at minus 4 degrees. So obviously, we're here in South Florida. That's where we manufacture all these beacons. On a nice humid day like today out there, 85 degrees with 200% humidity, the battery lives are obviously going to last a lot longer. Just know that EPIRBs minimum 48 hours, PLBs minimum 24 hours.
Gotcha. Cool. And the cool thing is too, guys, when this thing activates off the side of the boat, either through a hydrostatic release where the boat sinks and it automatically deploys as a category 1, or a category 2 where it's sitting in its piece here. Even if this beacon gets wet, as long as this little notch right here on the back is sitting and connected with this magnet that exists right here in the bracket, it will never activate. However, if that beacon comes out of its bracket there, it is manually water activated. So that's just another level of peace of mind. That's not one other thing you don't have to worry about. Take it, rip it out of here, throw it into the water, or depending upon what you can, keep it on your person with the long lanyard there, because it is automatically going to float. And then, like Mikkel said, with respect to the PLB, where you need to manually keep it positioned or positioned right here, so it's always looking at the north sky, or excuse me, northward, upward. This is going to always float and always continuously give that signal off. So it's another thing that you don't have to worry about. Good thing, especially for dads, you got kids. It's you want to make sure that the child is taken care of, and you've got a lot of other things to worry about once that happens. Yeah. One other question that I had come in is just talk about the difference in the PLBs in the improvements that we've made. Being in the Survivor Club, I see a lot of folks who are being rescued with these nowadays, but you're starting to see, as these have come onto the market, these are being used in rescues now too. One thing to note is that we've taken a lot of the user feedback and the survivor feedback from actual survivors of these pieces right here, these older models, and incorporated them into this. Could you kind of talk about some of the improvements that we've made and that our friends in the engineering team right here in Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale, have been creating to make this a better product?
Yeah. So the original Rescue Link that you were just holding up, that model had been around for I believe it was 8 years and was by far our best-selling unit ever. And last year we just launched the new version of that, and like you said, we went out and actually talked with members of our Survivor Club that used that particular beacon and said, what did you like about it? But more importantly, what did you not like about it, and what could we make improvements on? And so number one was the antenna clasp, making that easier and more intuitive on how to unlatch the antenna. That was one of the good feedbacks. 2 was moving the activation button right onto the front of the unit. We had great feedback from some of the families that said, man, I deployed the antenna and I didn't even see the buttons on the side for a minute or two. I wasn't sure what to do. So made it really easy right in the front. When you deploy that antenna, that protective cap, opens up so you can see that on button. We got a lot of feedback that, the strobe light's great, the flashing LEDs are great, but I didn't know what the beacon was doing. And so they wanted that digital display. And so that's why we put that in the Rescue Link View model. So it'll walk you through a self-test, and when during an actual activation, it's telling you, every time it's sending a distress message, it's scrolling your GPS coordinates, which is great because if you have your cell phone or you have a VHF, and you can actually read those GPS coordinates off the screen, over those two mediums. And then wearability was the last piece, making sure it's easy to be worn in a life jacket, and then, on a pair of shorts and in pockets and stuff. So we've added a belt strap, a belt clip, an oral inflation clip. And so there's literally multiple ways for you to mount that to yourself, which is the most important thing. The number one question I always get, at a trade show is, well, what's the best beacon for me? And I always tell people, it sounds like a dumb answer, but it's the beacon you have in an emergency. It's the beacon you have when you actually have an emergency. So if you're not wearing that beacon, and you left it at home or you left it on the other boat, it's not going to do you much good in that particular moment. So we want to make that as wearable as possible. And so that a lot of great feedback from the survivors, and it was nice to have that wealth of information to share with our engineering department. And I think they really knocked it out of the park when they came up with this new design.
Yeah, I love this one. I take this one everywhere. We take it when we go hiking. We take it when we go hunting. Some of the survivors I've heard have literally fallen out of tree stands while bow hunting, arrow through the leg, bleeding out. But still, that's a long way to walk when it's 2 miles to the nearest road, and then to get safety personnel to you. So activating a beacon sometimes it is the best thing to do. Could we go ahead? The last question I had was really talking about what's the difference between this and some of our, I'm not even going to call them competitors, because there's not a lot of products that actually do this, but there are some other products out there that track your progress. There's kind of a attractive social media type of component where you see where I've been and what, I don't know if I necessarily want people knowing where I've been when I'm fishing and to see all my secret spots and everything. But my point is that this is different. And can you tell, folks out there why this is different and how it's used differently than some of the similar products that are out there?
Yeah. So, they're with a PLB and even an EPIRB, they really have one purpose in life. And it's just to save your life. They've got the one button just to save your life in an emergency. There's some other products out there, like a Spot or an InReach, and some of these other products that use either Globalstar or Iridium satellites. They got some really cool tracking features and two-way messaging capabilities and things like that. It's really apples and oranges. Those products, they've got a lot additional other messaging and tracking capabilities. Just know that comes at a price every month and or every year with subscriptions. And so those beacons can get relatively costly relatively quickly. So just know what you're getting when you get into that, and know what features are really important to you. Kind of like you said, for you, tracking might not be something that's desirable because you don't want people to know where you're fishing. Yeah. But for other people, that might not be the case. But, there is a difference with the SOS piece. Like I said, the 406 megahertz signal goes direct to Coast Guard and to Air Force. There's no third party, intermediary that is, having to route it to the right. It just goes direct, and it gets there within 2 minutes.
Government entities.
Exactly. It's we all pay tax dollars. That's what keeps those satellites up. That's what keeps NOAA and the Coast Guard funded. And so, we're using that resource to go direct to you. Whereas, with those other products, they do have SOS buttons. Mm-hmm. Note that, the only way search and rescue know where you are with those other beacons is relying on the GPS. So if you're in like a real bad tree cover, or that product is, kind of submerged and not getting GPS, they might know that you have a distress out there, but if your beacon can't download GPS, they're not going to know where you are. And that's going to greatly delay your rescue. With EPIRBs and PLBs, GPS is just a nice add-on. The satellites will actually triangulate your position, and they actually don't even really need the GPS position from the actual beacons, where they can just use the decoding. And then they have the homing frequency, like we said. So there's 3 different levels of redundancy in there. And so, like I said, those commercial call centers with the other devices, are then going to provide, reach out to Coast Guard and reach out to local rescue on land and let them know they have a client that is in trouble, and here's the coordinates and here's all their information. And so it's a longer process, as you can imagine, when you've got to go, from one step to the next step to the next step.
Gotcha. And last thing I'll say about that, guys, Father's Day is coming up. We've all gotten socks. We've all gotten ties. Those are it's great. To all my ladies out there, but it's not going to save my life. This is something that's like having an insurance policy that I've never worked with a company where and I'm sure I've told some other folks out there this as well. We hope you never use our products, but we sure hope you have them. Because I've seen plenty of users who've said, I thought I was fine because I had a VHF. I thought I was fine because I had a cell phone. I thought I was fine because I had an Iridium sat phone. It's amazing how quickly, as in a survival scenario, that stuff can become completely useless due to power, due to any type of other mechanical failure. And the last resort is having this type of product out there that will work, that has rescued tens of thousands of folks out there. And that's why I'm such a big proponent and believer in it, because while those other things are great, and that's what we're used to having, convenience, it's amazing to see how quickly those other forms of typical rescue communication will not work. And then when you need, as a dad, to save your life, that you have a responsibility to the rest of your family, but then also the lives of the other people that are on board with you, which may be your kids, maybe your wife, maybe your friend, and maybe he's a dad and has a family as well. So just something to think about, when we move into Father's Day. No joke. It is something that will save your life. It's saved tens of thousands of lives. It's so easy to use, and it's really just a no-brainer.
Yeah, not exactly. And so on that note, let's like to wish all those dads out there a happy Father's Day coming up here. And I think to echo Justin's point, to all the moms out there that might happen to be watching this, ditch the ties this year, ditch the brown socks and whatnot. Get that angler or that outdoor enthusiast. Hopefully another product that they hopefully never have to use, but at least from the wife's perspective, or even a mom's perspective, it's nice to have that peace of mind at home when your loved one's going out and doing something crazy, and whether it be fishing or hiking or camping or anything like that. So it's nice to have that level of peace of mind at home, especially if they're bringing the kids out or anything like that. So on that note, I think everyone have a happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day, everybody. Thank you very much for watching.